Thanks so much for your patience, everyone. Minister Larivee is going to provide some brief remarks, and then we'll get an update on the fire from Chad Morrison, and then we'll be able to answer your questions.
Thank you. So good afternoon. I'm going to start with what's happened since we last spoke to you. First and foremost, we continue to fight the wildfire around Fort McMurray. The weather is not cooperating with us right now, and the fire is now estimated to be 101,000 hectares in size. Conditions remain very dangerous in the area, and I want to stress that the communities of Fort McMurray, Anzac, Gregoire Lake Estates, and Fort McMurray First Nation are still under mandatory evacuation notice. These communities are not safe, and people are not able to return to these communities until their safety can be assured. Firefighters are working in the area, focusing on structural protection to reduce any further spread into critical infrastructure in the downtown core, as well as the hospital, water treatment plant, and airport. There are at this time 290 structural firefighters and 200 wildfire fighters, 11 helicopters, 12 pieces of heavy equipment, and 16 air tankers working in the area in and around Fort McMurray. And we have additional firefighters that will be deployed in the next few days. They will provide relief to those firefighters who are very tired after having made tremendous efforts in the last few days and deserve a chance to rest. Conditions in our province remain extremely dangerous. Government announced a province-wide fire ban yesterday, and today I am announcing a province-wide ban on the recreational use of off-highway vehicles due to the risk these vehicles pose in the very dry conditions Alberta is experiencing right now. This restriction applies only to recreational use on public lands and provincial parks, including designated off-highway vehicle trails. It will not apply to agriculture, commercial, or industrial use, or to Indigenous people using off-highway vehicles for farming, business operations, or traditional use. It will take immediate effect and has been enacted with the support of the Alberta Off-Highway Vehicle Association and their members. This morning, ground evacuations began for Fort McMurray residents who evacuated north of town. RCMP were supervising vehicles traveling south on Highway 63, ensuring they stay on the highway and not detour into unsafe areas in the city. The latest report from the highway is that travel was suspended temporarily around 1 p.m. due to heavy smoke. However, traffic began moving again at approximately 2 p.m. Safety continues to remain our top priority, and this remains an active fire area. The patience and understanding shown by the evacuees north of Fort McMurray has been remarkable, especially considering the challenging circumstances they are facing. I would like them to know that allowing vehicles to move south is a high priority, and local authorities will continue to allow traffic through as long as it is safe to do so. There have already been more than 1,200 vehicles moved safely in a controlled manner along Highway 63 through Fort McMurray and south. I know firsthand from my experience in the Slave Lake fire that some of the most pressing needs for evacuees are those very basic items like toiletries, food, and clothing. That's why our government announced today that immediate financial assistance will be provided to those who have been displaced from their homes. $1,250 for adults and $500 for each dependent. We're still working on the details of distribution, but we will need to know how many people we're dealing with and where they are at. So it remains important that all evacuees register either with a reception center if they're staying in one or with the Red Cross. Our goal is to start getting this cash into Albertans' hands as early as mid-next week, Wednesday. Please note that government offices will not have further information about these funds until that time. There are other supports available in the meantime, as well through people's own private insurance companies with whatever coverage you may have, and along with the efforts of the Red Cross. And we encourage all Albertans who have been displaced to access the supports that are available so they have what they need and what their families need in the coming days. I know that this is an incredibly difficult experience for evacuees, and people need a break from just waiting to hear when they can return home. That's why we are working to provide options to help give families who are dealing with this tragedy a break. That's why Alberta's provincially owned and operated historic sites and museums will be opening their doors to those who have been displaced by the wildfire, with free admission to its facility across the province from May 15th to September 5th. They have plenty of activities for adults and kids and could be a much-deserved break for families during a time of stress. This afternoon, we advised Mayor Blake that we will defer the June and September education property tax remittances for Fort McMurray. The deferral will help ensure the municipality's administration can focus on immediate emergency needs and reconstruction. We will work with the regional municipality on future tax assessments to ensure they take into consideration the impact of recent events. This morning, Cabinet also approved an order in Council to establish the 2016 Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo Disaster Recovery Program. The DRP will allocate an initial $200 million for emergency costs. This amount was already included in Budget 2016 to cover emergency disaster costs. We anticipate that a portion of DRP costs will be shared by the federal government through disaster financial assistance arrangements. And we've already reached out to the federal government to ensure the support will be there for people, businesses, and communities impacted by this disaster. This morning, our government also established the Wood Buffalo Ministerial Recovery Task Force, chaired by Premier Notley, and I will serve as its vice chair. Its tasks will be to ensure the safety and security in the affected areas, support the needs of the communities, plan the timely reentry of residents when it is safe to do so, and support the resumption of municipal economic and business activities. Members of the task force will include the Ministers of Health, Infrastructure and Transportation, Finance and Treasury Board, Environment and Parks, Agriculture and Forestry, Human Services, Seniors and Housing, and Indigenous Relations. We have a long road ahead of us, and we are still dealing with this initial threat and the risks to public safety, property, and infrastructure. But we know that it's never too early to begin planning for the recovery, and our government has already begun this process. I will now turn it over to Chad for a wildfire update before we take some questions.
Thank you, Minister. Chad Morrison with Alberta Wildfire. As the Minister noted, this fire continues to grow to the northeast away from the community. The fire at this time is currently at 101,000 hectares in size. The current report that we found, we've got more information on Anzac, and currently we understand that the fire did breach the community late last night. While most of the community remains intact, about 18 to 20 structures have been potentially lost. We are continuing to work also on getting more status on the update of the Nexon Long Lake plant at this point. On this fire currently, we have over 490 firefighters on the ground, and we talked about the helicopters and air tankers already. We continue to work very much in the community. There are some hot spots coming up this afternoon in the downtown area and in the north, and firefighters continue to work on them as the fire behavior continues to challenge firefighters today. Also coming in to the province that arrived today, we have 83 firefighters from Ontario, 4 air tankers from Quebec have arrived, and Northwest Territories also was kind enough to provide us with an emergency air tanker to cover our lost one that we lost out of service yesterday. And so in total, we're back at a total of 27 air tankers available to work on fires. We have a substantially extreme fire conditions in front of us still for the next 2 days. Today, even though it's not as hot, it is extremely dry out there, and the winds continue to push from the southwest to push the fire to the northeast into the forested areas. We expect the fire to continue to grow into this northeastern, more remote forested area here over the next 2 days. The forecast for tomorrow is to have 27-degree temperatures. Winds continue to be from the southwest, so this is good for the communities down here in the Gregoire Lake area, and the Anzac folks as well will continue to be good news for the larger Fort McMurray area. But I do expect that there's a high potential that this fire could double in size by the end of day tomorrow. So that being said, it is at extreme fire conditions. The fire continues to challenge firefighters, and obviously firefighter safety is our first priority. I can give you a couple quick other updates on other fires in the province of note. The other one that's of note right now is along the BC border, and there is an evacuation preparedness notice in place. It's in the Clear Hills County area. That fire along the border is about 9,000 hectares. BC Wildfire and ourselves are working together to continue to try and control that. And there's some remote residents and ranching folks in that area, and they've been placed on notice at this time. And with that, that's the latest update on the fire situation at this time, and we'll turn it back to questions.
We'll take any questions from the floor.
Maybe a question for Scott. We heard some reports today of a few stragglers in town, and people refusing to leave that have been moved out by the RCMP. This obviously isn't your first priority, but we have got some calls from people who say, what is being done to make sure that these people aren't looting, robbing, doing things that they shouldn't be doing? Obviously, I said it's not your first priority. But.
There are 2 points here. First off, there have been some initial reports of a few people who decided to remain in the downtown core. My only comment is it is unsafe. You're putting yourself at risk. You're also putting first responders at risk, because if a fire starts and the potential is there, then obviously they're going to come and they're going to put their lives at risk for you. You need to get out of the downtown core if that's where you are. You need to get out of the Fort McMurray area for your own safety. It is not safe to be there. Secondly, is that throughout the evening, the RCMP still maintain a presence. We still have structural engineers and wildfire. We have a presence on the ground 24/7. We have received no indication of any reports of looting whatsoever.
The question for Chad. There was some low possibility of rain in the forecast. I think the last one we saw was maybe 40% chance of rain at some point this weekend. What's your latest on that, of getting some rain there?
Yeah, we're always hopeful for such things. It's a little too early to tell at this point for rain. We are seeing, though, in our longer-term forecast, at least we'll have a bit of cooler conditions and relief towards that Sunday-Monday period. To be direct, though, we really need to get through today and tomorrow and see where that fire is at, and then hopefully we get some cooler conditions where it's a little safer for firefighters to be out there and working on some of those critical areas.
And convoy, is it the plan to continue throughout the day today as long as it's safe throughout the day tomorrow? And at what point do you cut it off again, like you did at 1 o'clock today?
The only reason we stopped today was it became unsafe for a temporary period of time. The the reality is that we want to keep Highway 63 open and flowing for as long as we can, so we can get as many evacuees. Our goal is to clear the 25,000 evacuees that are currently in the north, to move them out to the south, where we can connect them up with all of the emergency social services supports that they need. That is our goal, so we will continue to do that until no one remains in the camps to the north. We are also closely working with our industry partners, and we're going to look at starting to send up some much-needed supplies and equipment that'll start to move north on Highway 63 into the camps to the north, as long as it's safe to do so.
And do you have an update on flights today? How many and how many people?
The goal. I'm sorry, I don't have the current number right now, but the goal today is 5,500, and that will leave us approximately 4,000 people for tomorrow to fly out on the air bridge. So great progress is being made on evacuees moving from the north through the air and on the ground.
All right, thank you very much for coming, everyone.